Oh my goodness. Eddie, you just dropped so many nuggets. Like my head, I'm going to need your help to digest because there's just so much there. Everybody, once again, I'm Dr. Carmen, the Girl Dad Coach, and I'm so happy to be partnered with my C suite friends over at Sanico. Zakira, tell them who you are.
I am Zach here, and I am the interim CEO at Sanico. Sanico is a menstrual health company. So we talk about menstrual health, but we're big on community and advocacy in community. And I'm going to hand the mic right over to my marketing officer, Roxanne Stewart.
Hi, thank you so much for having this awesome summit for what we're doing here. I'm really excited for everything that you had to say, Eddie. That was a really awesome experience.
One of the things, there are so many things, Eddie, that stood out to me about just what you deliver, how you package it, how you structure it. But one of the things that you said was that, don't wait too long to give your daughters advice because, when they're teenagers, they're no longer interested in listening to you, which is so true. There's so many stories of the terrible teens, and I don't know who my kid is, when they're a teenager, and I just can't connect with them. So, what how should dads get started early? And, what are some of those things? Help us remember and unpack some of those things that they should be saying. And then also, what does it look like when they don't start early?
Ooh, that third one. Let's not go to third one for a little bit because that could be uncomfortable. So first off, appreciate this session and being able to engage with you in the live space, and thank you very much for the comments about how the interview went. And so early is relative, and I tell, I have a son who now has a son, so I'm actually a grandfather. And what I tell young fathers particularly is the first 3 to 4 years, as you're trying to navigate keeping them alive and you're trying to make sure nothing crazy happens, that is the time once you get past that 2 year mark to really start thinking about what is it going to mean to raise them to be an adult. Just start thinking about it then. So between the age about 3 and 4, really I offer that fathers and parents start to kind of talk. What's important? What are the top 2 or 3 things? What I call my philosophy, but what are the things that really matter? So early to me is in that pre 4 to 5 when you move past the okay, they're no longer going to be a baby for the rest of their life. Once you get to that realization, when you stop changing diapers and they start moving around and they start, verbalizing as opposed to crying, you then get the point like, okay, I need to get ready myself. So I think early is around that time. Then you progress into the 5, 6, 7 year old. And that is really the space where I think you need to start to transition into doing. So you've been thinking about it for 2 or 3, 4 years. Now, what are you doing? What are the conversations? What are the topics that you want to introduce? Some of them, maybe now, some may be a couple years later, because you build that foundation from a for developing and raising adult from about 5, 6 to really 12 or 13, because the consequence when they become teenagers is what I call that black wall. And I'll share, if I can share a quick story that I had with a parent. He was a coworker of mine I met, and I was telling him about what I did with my youngest daughter. And this is just something I came up with because my youngest daughter, she's gifted and talented. Her personality and the way to communicate her, as you know, sometimes they're socially awkward. And she was really good at masking and deflecting, which is really good as an adult, problematic when you're a teen, frustrating when you're a parent. And so when she was about 11th grade, I had this pretty extensive conversation because I had to go around the back to get to the front. Otherwise, she'd try to block. If you guys know anybody that's that smart, you know what I'm talking about. But at the end of it, I convinced her that I wanted to spend, before we go to church every week, no phones, no distractions, time walking, just so we could talk. And I wanted to build our relationship because I said, look, you're going to be leaving the house and I need to make sure you're ready. And we need to have more than just surface conversations. And in my mind, I said, I'm not going to try to teach her during the walk. I'm going to explicitly allow her the full time to talk to me, and I will exclusively respond. So we leave about 30, 40 minutes before my wife cooked breakfast and we went to church. That's kind of what we did. And we would just do a loop around the block. And she would tell me about her friends, what's going on at school, and I would respond. And maybe the last 3 to 4 minutes when we're coming down the last stretch or so, I would then start maybe pausing in nuggets and kind of listening more. And we did that for a year and a half, 2 years. I think it was like the end of her junior year. And the funny thing is, to this day, my daughter she just had her birthday yesterday. She just turned 26. When she comes home, if it's a weekend, guess what she's asked me to do on that weekend morning? She wants to go walk, and we still do it. Now, here's the other side to that. All the stuff I've been talking was built up to allow for even that to occur, required her to be responsive. This is the other side, Dr. Carmen. I told that same story to a guy I worked with, sort of a friend, not quite a friend, business acquaintance. And he goes, wow, that's interesting. I think I might use that with my daughter because I've been having a lot of friction with my daughter for years. She was 16 or so, same age as my daughter at the time. And I said, yeah, man, go ahead and use it. I mean, if it helps, it helps. I saw him about a month later. He goes, Eddie, I got to tell you something. Man, I was in the airport flying out he was going overseas. And I got a call from my wife. My daughter attempted suicide. And I'm like, what? He goes, I asked her about doing the walk and she shut me down and said no. And so he goes back and says, after it didn't succeed, thank God, back at the house, trying to figure out what's going on. And she asked him at that point, Dad, you still willing to go walk with me every week? And he said, he was just like, Eddie, I was floored, but it opened up. So he had to recover from what wasn't built, that black wall he could not see beyond because they're so good at masking it. And then you got to be ready whenever it opens up. So there's a pro and there is serious consequences on the backside, is a con as well. So thank you for letting me share that. But I think that kind of illustrates some of the stuff that I was talking about.
It did. And I have a great segue question because we're looking at the other side of, those life nuggets, right? That was my favorite takeaway. And then just knowing that there's a keyword to let the daughter know, okay, I want to talk to you right now. Can you hear me out? And so, I'm thinking about the daughters that just similar to the example you just shared, where they're all checked out. You haven't been present in my life. I'm not going to actively listen to you. So, what life nugget can you give for a dad or a daughter at that stage where they want to get back to being able to listen to each other, but it's just feels unrepairable at the very moment?
Yeah. And I actually had a father maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, time runs together. He had a similar issue with his daughter. So his daughter, she was in some of my classes I gave when I was in church, and could be distant. And years later, I talked to the father who I know now, and he goes, man, I just don't have her. She's not responding. I think she might have even left at that point. She had left. She was older, an older teenager. And I told him, I said a couple things, man. One, always make sure you're available and that you are reaching out. She may not respond. She may not be in a place in her life and you may not understand it, but you need to always, as the father, make yourself available. Call, text, whatever it is, but let her know that you are there and you are reaching out. And maybe about 3 or 4 years later, he came to me and said, hey, man, just out of the blue almost, she responded. She had gone through whatever she went through and she responded. And then he was able to build on the fact that I didn't leave you. I was always here. I was just waiting for you to come. And so I think for her, you guys' perspectives, different from a gender perspective, is knowing that you can go back and there's not that friction, there's not this animosity, it's just going to be perceived open arms, causes you to be more likely to do that at the point where you're like, man, I want to go back. And the question is he going to receive me, or is it so contentious that he's going to deny me? And if you can leave in her mind, in her heart, that I'm going to receive you, then you're doing your part as a father, and then you just got to wait on your daughter to do her part.
Ooh, that is so powerful, but encouraging. So, there are lots of dads out there, parents out there who didn't start early, right? Who didn't do that, who didn't have the intentionality, to do that. And their teens are like, this example that we just described, where they're just disconnected. But it's encouraging that not all hope is lost, right? There are some parents and dads that I've talked to where they're just like, I'm giving up. I can't do it. She won't talk to me. I want to be able to talk to her about the sad stuff, the no sex, but like I can't. She won't hear me. And so this is very encouraging what you're saying to for dads to keep communicating that they are there, right? That they are present, that they will be open whenever their daughter is ready to talk. And that is so powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it, and sometimes it's hard. I mean, I even, when I used to talk to fathers who have younger daughters, and sometimes they're having issues with the mom blocking. And, my wife had told me this. She was like, look, he needs to, write a letter, do something that physically you can reference. And if it doesn't, I mean, but all you can do as a father when you're in those different situations, you have to persevere. You have to be resilient because all you can do is what you can do, but there's going to come a point in time. I've done talk to fathers whose daughters in their 20s, some who are in their teens, some who are younger than that. There's going to come a time where your accountability is going to be called out. And what did you do? And did you give up? And I think that's what we have to do as our role as fathers.
I really
It,
love that. Sorry.
go ahead, Roxanne.
I really love that. And I think you kind of covered the time part of it. And one of the other things that stood out was that you had to be prepared with your time, energy, and finances to be available. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. And I think presence is the key part. I talk about available, but it's being available holistically. And that is mentally, that's physically, that's emotionally, in many respects, that's spiritually. And then secondarily is financially. Financially is really to allow finances not to be an impediment, something that precludes you from doing what you want to do. But the first three or four is a critical part. And we as men, even as people, it's very easy to have one of those not there when you're actually in a space. You're physically there, but you're mentally thinking about something else.
Right.
You're mentally there and physically there, but emotionally you're not connecting. You're not empathizing. You're not relating to the body language, to the tone. And that's where when you can get that from when they're single digits, you can translate what has changed. So being fully present has to go with being available. Because if you're not available, that's one thing. That's a little bit black and white. But if you're present and you're not fully present, it's going to be noticed. It's going to be noticed and it's going to affect. So to me, mental, physical, emotional presence in the space with your daughter when she is looking to be present or even when she's not. Because then what happens is over time, she starts to realize, my dad is there and
Mhm.
okay, let me join them now.
I was just thinking about the dads who are co-parenting, right? Where their daughter may not be under their roof full time, so maybe there's some shared, time with parents in there. And there are some dads who are, discouraged by that, like I don't have my daughter with me, all the time. So what kind of encouragement might you offer to the dads who are co-parenting?
Yeah, that's difficult for multiple reasons. And one of the big reasons is the communication between the parents. And then that kind of bleeds into sometimes the different philosophical views and way to deal with situation and circumstance. And I would offer to fathers who are in a co-parenting situation is to be very clear on what you were doing when you're spending time with your children. Um, you can clarity communicate to your wife, but be very clear on how you're managing your time and what you're communicating to your children with your children. Stuff I talked about, some of that stuff you do over 5, 10, years, but sometimes you only have a succinct period of time. And during that time, you have to be even more clear. You have to prepare beforehand even more so. I used to work with, in the Army, they have what's called reserve component. Reserve units, you only train, let's say, once a month. Well, what that means is before you go, because you only have that short period of time, you actually need to prepare more so you don't waste that time. And if you walk in there without that preparation, you're wasting opportunities. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing is both communicate with your co-parent on what you're doing, what you believe is important, and then you follow through and prepare and communicate that and spend that quality time with your daughter when you have it.
It's powerful.
Time has flown by. This was so good. So we want to end it with where can people find you, dad, daughters alike, and continue to want to get access to you? I know you said we got to email you, right? But email you and what else? What's our next step? What do we do after that?
Yeah, so obviously my website is the backside of my email, jedwardwhitejr.com. That has all the information to contact me, to find out about my book, to find out about what programs I have. And the email the easiest way, because that way, depending on what you want, I can get you. But you can go to that site and you can do stuff without necessarily having to communicate with me. But to take those online classes, I have a handful of classes that really take what we talked about here and during the interview, and allows you to go deeper. And I'm offering that for all the summer participants for free, at least one class. So you can really get more references. So I think really either go to the website, find out more about me, or email me. And whether we would do it passively or whether we get on the phone and talk, what I want to do is help fathers be the best fathers they can be. Most importantly, because their children deserve that, particularly their daughters.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much for how you show up in the world, Eddie. You are absolutely amazing. I'm just so grateful. We are all grateful for your wisdom, for your expertise, for your observation, for your self reflection, and, for your leadership in this area of dads and supporting their daughters. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Appreciate the invite. Really do. Thank you very much.